as we welcome in Kirk Muyres from Team Dunstone. What's up, buddy?
Thanks for having me. Happy birthday, Roddy.
Thank you so much. Special day to have you in here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I can't believe I made the cut on your big day.
Well, I don't think anybody around here knew it was my birthday until this morning. Anyways, hi, Connor. He's been writing all day, young viewer in Yorkton.
Nice.
So Kirk, of course, is from Team Dunstone. He is the poster boy. Will this show up? It will. The poster boy. Curlingcares.com fundraising calendar for 2021. You're the poster boy. Look at this. That's why I said I didn't recognize him with his clothes on. There's Kirk. Amazing job. How are you with posing for half nude, man? How are you with that?
I don't mind it, but I must say it's amazing what Photoshop and good lighting can do. And a week off potato chips, too. A week off potato chips and good lighting, and suddenly you can look pretty decent.
Well, good for you for being part of that and all that you guys do for curling. So that's why I said this is such a Canadian show, because we're talking junior hockey, NHL, and now curling. And we'd heard the rumors that there was going to be a bubble in Calgary. I actually thought it would be the Saddledom for the Brier and the Scotties. And as you know, it's not. And you plan to be there.
That's the hope. We don't know how it's all going to shake out yet, and we'll get into that. But hoping to be there, hoping to be in it. How cool would that be? To be
I know.
Once in a lifetime. I know people talk about how it's going to be isolating and it'll be tough and there'll be no fans. But again, you can look at it kind of positively. If you can get in there, you can play competitive games. But the cool thing is, once in a lifetime, you're going to be in a bubble with other curlers. It's going to be unlike anything anybody's experienced in there. So it's going to be cool.
Well, I was excited to see your name on the board today that Clark had lined you up, because the viewership for our shows with curling, and obviously the online spiels when we had them here before they got shut down, the viewership was just insane. Insane. The one that you guys put on in early October had 200,000 viewers online only.
It's amazing.
Insane, man. TSN would be happy for TV numbers like that.
Yeah.
So what? This doesn't surprise you, though, right?
Well, the TV numbers we've seen over the years have always been so good, and now all of a sudden curling got shut down March 15th, like everyone else, and people have been sitting at home and just want their curling content so bad, and they'll get it any way they can. And then the guys at IKS here did an amazing production, and that just drove viewers into watching those spiels like crazy. It was like a TSN production. They do an amazing job.
It was, but I just can't. Forgive me for gushing, but it was a Sask only spiel. Because there was one in Banff and there was one in Ontario. I'm not sure who was the pro curlers. Well, the pro would be appropriate, right?
Yeah.
So if it was national, I can't imagine what the viewership would have been.
Yeah, it would have been crazy. I'm sure over 500,000 into 1 million.
Easily.
If you had all the fans watching and had some of the big matchups too that you're used to, the Kevin Cooey's, the Brad Jacobs, the Matt Dunstones playing, it'd been crazy.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to set the scene for how popular the Calgary bubble is going to be. And this Team Dunstone thing, it sure seems like you're getting rock star treatment. Would I be right in that? As much, because you're not out, because you can't be. But overall, is there some rock star stuff going on here? It's kind of the morphing of two super teams, man.
Yeah, that was kind of the thought process is, how do we kind of take that next step? And we talk about it a million times. How do you take that next step to go win the Brier, go represent Canada at the Olympics, all those sort of things? And it comes down to putting 4 players together that could, in my opinion, skip really good teams. You see that in Brad Gushu's team. They have 4 players that could be great skips. You look at Brad Jacobs' team, Kevin Cooey's team, who now put John Muyres at second, who's one of the best curlers ever to live, is now playing second on the Kevin Cooey team. So you need really good players coming together to make a really great team, and that was kind of the goal when we put this together. Now we've only been able to play 2 events so far, but it's been kind of rolling along right.
But everybody's, like you said, just waiting. They're following. But can I just ask you this before we get to the actual nuts and bolts of the road ahead? What about these personalities? Like, did Johnny Moe have to swallow a little pride to do that? Or, like, how is it to bring 4? Like, you guys all got pretty big personalities. You know what I mean? You're not all loud. You're not all Ben Heberts, but do you have to?
Yeah, I think there's an element to that, but I think there's also an element of really, really good and successful players like the Johnny Moes knows what he needs to do to get to the next step too. And maybe there's a little bit of swallowing pride, but I think it's more about realizing what is going to take you to the next step and just going with it, and realizing that nowadays it's not about the pecking order on a curling team. It's about everyone needs to play 90+% consistently. Everyone has to understand what that skip is going through in the big pressure moments. And I think for guys like Johnny Moe, they just kind of recognize that and kind of roll with it.
At one time, was it about a pecking order?
I think so. It was probably, even growing up, you kind of had that little mentality a little bit. But I think now it's about finding your little niche and your spot in that team. But I think when you look probably 20, 30 years ago, again, that was way before my time, but I'm sure there was a little bit of
your dad would have thoughts on that.
I'm sure he would know all about that.
Yeah. So anyways, to the road to the Calgary bubble. You're not there yet. And there's at least one team that has the same plans, and that's Team Flash. So what do you know about the provincial playdowns and how that's going to go?
Well, last correspondence we got was a couple weeks ago was hopefully that restrictions can loosen up and we can begin to play. Hopefully with everyone in the province that wants to play the playdown can play in certain different ways of doing it, whether that's different events on a different weekend, whether that's maybe a best of 3 matchups on a weekend and then moving to the next weekend to obviously not get too many people at an event. But more than likely, if we can play at all, because like you said in the rant at the beginning, like realistically, is that something we can do in the new year before, say, February 1st? This is just my thinking. Maybe a very small group of teams can play, 3-4 teams. Maybe they'll get a special exemption to do something like that. More than likely, though, I think Curl Sask is going to have some very, very tough decisions to make on what team to send. That's just my opinion, just looking at the numbers, looking at what's going to be safe, looking at making sure everyone's protected, kind of going into the January, February until everyone can get vaccinated. Quite honestly, I think they're going to have some tough decisions to make. And even if you can play with maybe 3 or 4 teams, they have to decide what 3 or 4 teams can be in that provincial championship. So I think it's going to be very tough to play a full, play down structure as we've been used to for the last, 100 years in this province.
And yet, I don't think they would have put out the statement they did if they didn't feel that they were open to some flexibility to get this done. I mean, we had Curling Canada officials on last week, 2 weeks ago, just last week, I think, explaining the bubble. And they said, we expect every region, every province, every territory to be here. So obviously the provinces are getting some guidance from the national governing body of curling. So they want it to happen, Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone wants it to happen. I think I've said this before. The most important thing for me, I think, in this whole curling bubble is the need to showcase our sport on national TV again. And that's the biggest thing. And hopefully every province and territory can send a team to showcase their province as well. I think that's so important. But we have to get back on national TV to continue to showcase our sport, to make sure it's not left behind to some of the other sports. We've done such a great job in the last few years of getting momentum, growing the game, getting people excited about curling. We need to keep that going. And I think that's the first and foremost important thing. And I think Curling Canada recognizes that, and they've done a great job with this bubble. And now in the Grand Slams, they're now adding into this bubble at the end of it as well. I think it's going to be great for the game. I just hope we can figure out a way to get people there fairly and safely.
Robin in Prince Albert's watching. He says, an Elite Four showdown brought to you by IKS. Sure, we're all thinking that, and we all think the provincial final will come down to Team Flash versus Team Dunstone, but there are other teams besides those top 4. How much of a stink do you think the other men's curlers in this province would say if they were excluded from a mini showdown?
Well, I think the other teams would be choked, and rightfully so. I mean, that's the beauty of curling and the provincial playdowns and that's the beauty of any sport, but especially curling, is anyone can win on any given day. Give me the chance, and maybe I'll win. And so if I was another team and that's a situation that maybe was on the outside looking in, I'd be choked. So I think that's why Curl Sask and everyone is working really hard to try to get a way to run a playdown system where everyone can play. But I think everyone has to be realistic with that. And like I said, I'm just glad I'm not Curl Sasking having to make those decisions.
Well, maybe they'll have a draw. That might actually be fair. I'm not sure to get into this. Craig Monroe, one of our viewers, says, geez, this guy should work in the CFL PR department. Well, his better half is the wonderful Claire Hanna from CTV TSN. Not that you weren't polished before, but has she given you some tips on speaking in front of the microphone?
She has. I must say she has. Not a lot, but she has. And like you said, Claire is amazing at what she does. So when she talks, I listen. I'll tell you that. She does an amazing job. And I know she's excited to get back covering the Riders whenever that may be, like everyone is in Regina.
But she's doing a great job covering the curling too, by the way. I don't know how she gets the scoops that she gets, though. I don't know how she gets them.
I must say, I try not to give her too much because it just obviously is going to come back to me. She does a great job of digging. And again, Claire, she does a great job of digging, finding her stuff. And I'm lucky to learn from her.
I tease, of course.
Yeah, of course.
I got to, hey, by the way, with What the heck did you guys call it? The Vaterstad Super Spiel?
The Vaterstad Saskatchewan Men's Super Series presented by Caledon Leasing. So the longest name in curling.
Were your sponsors all happy, by the way, with how that came off?
Oh, they were. They loved it. Again, same thing. How can you be mad about a couple 100,000 views and good quality views and reoccurring? Now people are going back watching those games, and so they were pumped, and that's really what we everyone in the curling world tries to do is make their sponsors happy, and we were happy that we were able to pull that off.
So the reason I asked you that was it came off, as far as I know, without a hitch. And with the social distancing aspect of sports, I'm not a doctor, and I've stopped trying to play one on TV, Kirk. I've stopped. But
Good, Roddy. Very good.
I know. But I'm looking at the different sports, as are you. Hey, they can golf. They're golfing. They're playing soccer. I haven't quite figured that one out yet. Hockey, no-go, as we've learned. But at the start of this, I thought curling really should lend itself to safely being able to be played in this pandemic. But does it not? Because you've been shut down.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been some situations where people have gotten it, and that's kind of the driver of that. And I mean, I agree. It seems you can social distance, you can stay away. It's an amazing sport for that. But there's just it is one of those things that it kind of seems to be everywhere in our world today, and so it's very easy to infiltrate different areas where you wouldn't think it would. And I think you can do it social distancing. You could stay away. They've done great protocols in place, and luckily we were able to run the Vaterstad Super Series without a hitch. And I think a lot of events were. And so you never know how the government sees that, or the health authority, whoever makes those decisions, and maybe puts in protocols that we can do it safely after Christmas, or maybe Curl, Sask, and the other bodies are deciding on how to put that together to propose to them how we can do it safely. And so maybe we will be able to play in the new year and just make sure we keep our distance and mask up and do those sort of things. We'll wait and see.
I guess that's the point, is we're all hoping that you can pull it off. I don't see how it would be a problem, but again, I'm not a doctor. But I know you got to roll, so I'm going to ask you one last question. Last night I watched the start of the NBA doc. I don't know if you saw it, Dupes, on NBA TV, the Raptors Inside the Bubble. I think the first two parts of it aired, and it was exactly what we thought it would be, Kirk. NBA players in Orlando in a bubble. What were they doing? Working out, practicing, some were golfing, drinking macchiatos, and eating buffets. Boom, that's the bubble. From the NHL bubble, from what we heard, which, by the way, people would pay to live like that in our Disneyland bubble, Disney World. Don't complain. NHL, they said, was like being in jail, and I have a little more time for that, because for what those guys were saying, because you weren't at Disney World, you were in Edmonton and Toronto, and you literally couldn't leave the bubble. They were very stringent about that, and the guys aren't in a rush to go back. We haven't got into the hockey talk yet, but you're seeing now they're talking about bubbles in Edmonton if they're going to return to play next year, and the players are like, I don't want to go back there. So for the bubble for curling, how are you with your job, A, to be able to be gone, and are you willing to be in there for an extended period of time? Obviously you are, but Are you mentally psyching yourself up for it?
Well, I think so. Like I said earlier, I'm seeing it as an opportunity to go and experience something once in a lifetime. A sport bubble, how cool would that be to be a part of? Luckily, my job, I've worked from home since I graduated university, so that won't change. But I think for some people, it's going to be very tough. You may have to quarantine before or after. They have to make the decision on whether they quarantine before, after, and 10 days in a bubble. Now you're out of a month of work. So there's going to be really tough decisions for a lot of the curlers to make. And like I said, curling's more of a working class sport. So none of us are doing it for a living. So you got to try to figure out how to do it. I'm looking forward to getting into the bubble, experiencing that. Our team's lucky we are able to do it with our jobs. All of us can do it, but I don't think everyone's going to be like that. But I think it's going to be cool. I think curlers as well are used to kind of the working class way of traveling. You know, we find the cheapest airplane ticket, we find the cheapest hotel, we sometimes eat only 2 meals a day because we can't afford 3, those sort of things. So I don't think it's going to be, honestly, as tough for curlers to get in that bubble, and it's not going to be as mentally tough as it would be for maybe some of the other athletes that are used to traveling, charter, nice hotels, nice meals, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I think it'll be easier for curlers to be okay in that bubble.
Nice. Well, I know the importance of sponsorship. We wouldn't be on the air without it. And I love the shirt. It's very NASCAR worthy, which I endorse. Who do you want to promote for Team Dunstone?
Well, I mean, we got tons of them, but we'll just go with what's on here. We got Caledon Leasing, Mickles Industries, Vaterstad, Sask Canola, Core Grain, North Star, Agramax, Glon Insurance. My back has Apex Plumbing and Heating, Atlas Apex Roofing, and Quarks is another good sponsor. And Ice Pad. I think I got them all covered there. I think we got to the end. So yeah, appreciate you having me on, Roddy, and letting us showcase our sponsors. I mean, it's huge for us. Again, if we want to be one of the top teams in the world, we need to find a way to fund that. And so I appreciate you having me on and letting us showcase.
This has been awesome.
Support us.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Good luck. And to my man, Hank, your dog, Merry Christmas to him too.
Thank you very much, Roddy.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.